myself. Okay, I'm going to introduce myself briefly. So hi, I just turned on my mic, my video. Hi, hello, I'm Akua Oseiwaah Ahenkorah. I'm a WWCode director for Accra, the Accra network. I work as currently as operations manager for EAI information systems, but I have been in the tech space for 10+ years. Started as a developer. My first degree was in computer engineering. So started as a developer, been through different aspects. So testing and various forms. And currently the operations manager for EAI Information Systems, a software development company. Okay, so although I use different languages, Python is one of the languages I do enjoy. So it's a pleasure for me to take you through this Python introduction session. Okay, and as I said, this is our second session. We had a first one, but for the first timers, we just have a quick recap on what we did in the first session for some few minutes, and then move on to what we'll be talking about today. Okay, so for this session, for our Python Lab so far, we are thinking of beginners. So we are considering everyone a beginner. So if you haven't touched Python before, or you haven't done any programming in Python, this is good for you. It's a great opportunity for you to start. Okay, so we just go straight into the practical session. I have some of our other WWCode directors here. So if you really want to introduce yourself, let's have the WWCode directors also introduce themselves to the new members especially.
Thank you, Akua. Hi, everyone. My name is Efia Usufofie. I'm the founder of the chapter, WWCode Accra. And like Akua said, I'm also a director. She's also a director. And I believe we have Angela Alu, who's also a director. I have another nonprofit I run another nonprofit called Coders Who Travel as the founder of that as well. And I also, I'm a senior data analytics consultant at Deloitte. Over to you, Angie. Angie, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. So okay. It seems Angie can't speak, so that's okay. Angie, you can type your introduction if you'd want to. We have Nabia. Nabia, can you speak? Okay, all right. All right. So we have the other directors, they would be chatting, they'll be putting their messages in the chat. But we
also have
just
Perpetual.
Yeah, Perpetual, yes. Hi, Perpetual. Okay. Can you speak? Okay, she hasn't unmuted, so I'm assuming she can't speak, so we would have them just
at the end, when you're done at the end.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll go straight into the practical session. This session is more practical. There would be talking about the basic concepts of Python programming and some concepts that cut across all programming languages, and then just writing some code and examples. And whenever you have any question, you can immediately put it in the chat or react or raise your hand, and then you would be called to ask your question. Okay, so we're just going to dive straight in. All right, I did mention that this is our second session. So we are going through a quick recap on what we did in our first session, just so that we are all at the same level, and then we can move into our second session. Can you all see my screen? Is it okay?
Yes,
I know I use the dark theme, but can you see clearly?
Yes, but if you can zoom it, it's a little bit small, but we see it.
Okay, small. Okay, all right.
It's what you can manage, but you know.
Okay. Let me increase my font a bit more and see if that would help. Right?
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So I have these Python Jupyter Notebook labs. Jupyter Notebooks mainly that I use in the first lab, and then in the second lab, it would also be the same thing. This would be shared with you after this session, so you can go through it personally. So what we did go over in the first session, because we've done previous sessions of showing how to install Python, we're not going to go over that. When you do get this document, you can just follow some links and guidelines that would help you install Python in your preferred editor. Okay, so for our Python labs, you're using Python 3. It would be through the Jupyter Notebook mostly. Okay, so if you do have any question or you're not familiar with it, you can just type your questions or also go through some how to start with Jupyter Notebook, right? So some of the links would help you with that. Okay, so the first topic, the topics we talked about in our first session were more on beginner level, so values and types, variables, operators, comments, and we looked at one built-in function, print. So that's what we mainly talked about in our first session. And a value, what we said then was a value is one of the basic things of a program. Okay, and this is a typing mistake there, so let me just correct that. And I still couldn't spell that correctly. All right. Okay, so it's one of the basic things a program works with, right? Like a number or a character. And we have different types of these values. So we have string, and string, it belongs to a type str in Python, and these are enclosed in single quote or double quote. So if you see anything enclosed in a single quote or double quote in Python as a string, okay? And integers are whole numbers, and they belong to the type int. Then we have floats, and floats belong to the type float. Please take note of the keys, since Python is very key sensitive. So we're talking about float with a small f, okay? And these are mainly decimal numbers. And then finally, the one we looked at is Boolean. So Boolean belongs to the type bool, and mainly for true or false, okay? So we looked at some examples here in terms of examples of strings and examples of int, int being these three, and then examples of floats. Then finally, we looked at some examples of Boolean, okay? So as I said, there's a very quick recap from what we did the last time. Afterwards, we looked at variables, right? So variables in any programming language is mainly a name that references a value, okay? So there's a name that refers to some value, okay? And for Python, an assignment statement creates a new variable and gives it a value, okay? So in Python, an assignment statement creates new variables and gives them values, okay? So we have example here being weight, which is a variable here, is equal to 69, okay? Age is equal to 60. Is it okay? True. And then name, Akua. Okay, so all these are variables we just created by assigning them a value. And in Python, definitely the variable, since it refers to a value, has the same type of the value it's referencing. Right? So weight would be an integer. Here, 0k is Boolean, name is a string. All right. Then for our third item, we looked at operators. And operators, we mentioned as special symbols that represent some computation or processing. There are lots of operators, but we looked at some of them. So we had the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponents, floor division, and modulus, right? And had some examples here in terms of be able to add two numbers. And for the same addition operator, if it is being done on string values, it changes, right? So instead of addition, since you can add strings, what it does concatenations, right? So it adds one string, it takes one string value, appends the next string value, okay? So it does a concatenation here. And the same way we, okay, if yeah, that's okay. All right. So for the same way, hi.
I was just saying bye.
Okay, bye, yeah. So for the same way, in terms of what we do directly to the values, we can do the same thing to variables, right? Let's just remember that variables are just names that reference some value. Okay, so we can do the same concatenation to a variable, and we did that here. Also, notice that and went over it the last time that multiplication on string does replication. Okay, so if I have this and I see multiply by 20, means that replicated 20 times. Okay, in integers or float numbers, that's what it's supposed to do mathematically. Okay, then we have this operator here, which is modulus. So what a modulus would do is it would take 4, so 6 divided by 4, and return the remainder. Okay, so when you divide 6 by 4, what is left is 2. Okay, so that's your remainder. So it returns that value to you. Okay, and we have general division. So division is just 5 divided by 2. You get it as a float, right? You get it with a decimal. If you do not want it that way, that's when you use the floor division, where it will return the whole number. That's the integer value for you. Okay, so you get 2 instead of the 2.5 because you're just interested in the whole number aspect. Okay. Then we went on to talk about comment. Right? So comments is commenting in Python or any other programming language allows you to add some notes to your code, makes it easy for you to remember what you were thinking when you wrote that program, or makes it easy for someone else to read the program and understand what it really does or some information about it. So for commenting in Python, you use the hash sign. So any text after the hash is a comment. Okay. And Python would ignore that statement or that line. Okay. Then finally, the last thing we talked about is the print function. Okay, so Python has some built-in functions for various operations. So there are some that are easy and it's part of Python the moment you install it. Okay, and these built-in functions help you with a lot of the things you want to do in Python anyway. So the one that we looked at is the print function. So the print function helps you just display output. Okay, so what you put in the objects or the value put in the print is what would be displayed for you, right? So it just prints it out. Okay, and what print does is it converts whatever value you put in there to a string and then outputs it. Okay. So after we went through these, then we looked at our first application, which was the BMI calculator app. Okay, and we used just the basic concept that we learned. So for a BMI app, we just looked at BMI is weight divided by height squared. Okay, so what we did is just created value variables, weight and height in centimeters, assign them some values, and then did some calculation. Okay, so for the height, we had it in centimeters, so we converted it from centimeters to meters, then calculated the BMI and printed it out. Okay, so that's all this application does. Okay, so that was for our first session. And this is where we're moving on to our second lab, right? So today's session, we'll be continuing from there. All right, so since we are all caught up, any questions at this point, any part that you need clarification before we move on to our second lab? You can put that in the comments. You can raise your hand on mute. Okay. All right, so since I don't have any comments, I'm moving on. Okay, so lab 2. Okay, let's see. That's a message. You're good. All right, thanks. Okay, great. So for, okay, that's not directed. So for lab 2, what we'll be covering in lab 2 is more of the built-in functions. So we're going to talk about input, int, float, and str. Okay, so these are some built-in functions we'll be covering. We'll also look at Boolean expressions, logical operators, and then finally we look at, okay, and finally we'll look at the conditional execution, which is we're going to look at if else, if else, and then the try except. Okay, so that's what we'll be going over today. All right, so where you can access this notebook. So I have it already on GitHub, and I'll share the repo link with you. That is one. If you're not familiar with GitHub, I've also uploaded it to Google Colab. That's what we shared it the last time. So I've uploaded the notebooks there. I will, I'll probably just send you a link or a link to a form where you can just give me your email addresses if you have a Gmail, and I can share it for Colab. That's if you prefer the Colab option. GitHub is public, so you can just go to the repo on GitHub. I'll share the link at the end of the session. Okay. Let's see, I think there's some other question. Okay, so I answered the one about the notebooks, then, okay, GitHub works, that's great. And we have, yes, okay. All right, okay, so GitHub works. Let me, whilst we're on it, let me just copy the GitHub repo right now, and then you can just go there if you want to. Okay, so that's the best thing. All right, so I just shared the link to GitHub. Great. So moving on. So first, we talk about our built-in functions. Okay, so built-in function inputs. Right, I probably have to update this. Initially, I was just going to talk about the input function and later realize that talking about the conversion is very important, especially when it comes to the input, because at some point you have to convert some value. Okay, so for input function, mainly what that does is it gets information from the user, the one that they are entering from their keyboard, right? So they enter some value through the keyboard, they press the enter or return key, and then the user here, and then they and the value that the user entered is returned to the program. Right? This also means that, okay, Google Colab link. Okay, right. I'm going to share that. So what happens is that the program would stop and halt. When it gets to the input statement, it will stop. It will halt until a user types in something and presses the enter key. Okay, until it continues. So where you have your input statement, when executing the program, at that point, it would halt, wait for your user's input, and then continue with the rest of the execution. Okay, all right. And for the other function, maybe one other thing to let you know about the input function is when you're calling the input function, you would want to also let the user know what you are expecting from them. Okay, so whilst we have these examples here, I think we can start something here. So let's just have an example. So let's see name, and I see input this, and just do print name. Okay, so I have this simple program. What it's doing is it's taking some inputs and then printing it out, right? So you would notice that, let's run this. Okay, can you see this, the text box up here? I hope you can all see it, right? So this is where I expect the input. So that's where I'm supposed to type in my input. Okay, and the program has halted. But then if you're a user and you just see a text box without any description, that would be very confusing, right? So I don't know if I should enter my age, my name, my date of birth. Like there's nothing that describes it for me to know what I should be entering, right? So that would definitely be very confusing for any user. So the moment I type it, that's printed, this works, right? But what the input function allows is for you to put in some text to give the user some more information, right? To describe the type of input you're expecting. So if I say, what is your name? So same thing, but now because I've added something else, now it makes it a bit more user-friendly, right? So I have what is your name. I know what I'm supposed to type here. That's my name. Okay. So I type that and then it's printed out for me. Okay. So for the input function, you can just call it without putting in any description, but that's definitely not advisable. You want to put in some description to guide your user in terms of what they should enter. Okay. And then what happens is the value that is received from the user, you get to store it. So that is returned to the program, right? Then you have to do something to it. So it's being returned to the program. You're storing it in a variable if you choose to. You can go straight into printing it directly without storing it in a variable, but most of the time you store it in some variables, right? So you store it in some variable and then you do whatever you want to do with it. Right? So it could be addition, it could be anything else. Okay. All right, so that's one aspect of that. Then we would go to the other functions, built-in functions. So we have int. So int, what it does is it converts any value you're passing to that function into an integer. A float would also convert any value passed to it to a float. And the str function will convert any value passed to it to a string. One thing to take note is the values that are being returned from inputs would always be a string. Okay, so even if I put in 1, 2, 3, it's numbers, but because it's encased in quotes, it's a string, right? So the user could be typing in numbers, but in the end, it's string. All right. Okay, so thank you. Okay, so that's mainly it, right? So that's what happens. So we'll start with our first example. So our first example here, and we've already had some example, but I'm still calling it first example because that's the first planned example that we had. So that's supposed what we'll be going over as a simple welcome system, right? And this is going to be welcome to Women Who Code Python Labs. Right? So we're just going to write a simple program with, that would welcome you, ask of your name, and then just welcome you. Okay, so it's just similar to what I wrote previously. So let's see. Let's see, print. So first of all, hi, this is Women Who Code Accra Python Labs. Right. Let me just say this is okay. So let's see. Welcome to Women Who Code Python Labs, right? So, and then we'll go into getting a person's name. So say input, right? So just using that input, what is your name? Okay. Then finally, we would print and see. So welcome. And I'm going to use some of what we use in the first one. I'm going to use, welcome. Welcome, so name. I'm going to add a name to it, right? So that will use the concatenation. So I'll use the plus. So welcome, name to this meetup. Nice. Here. Okay. So simple program, just ask the name, just print some welcome message, and that's it. So we have our first line executing, printing it here. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to increase the font for the results. I hope you can see that clearly. So hi, welcome to, let me see, is there a way to increase that? I probably have to check on that. So hi, welcome to Women Who Code Accra Python Lab. So our first line has executed. Second line, waiting for an input, right? So I just see here, now we move on to the third line. It executes and says, okay, and I made a rookie mistake here. So concatenation in Python strings does not automatically add the space for you. So you have to add it. So you see my Akua and the two are joined together, right? And that doesn't look good. So let's run this again. And put it Akua. Now we have it the way we want it to, right? So welcome Akua to this meetup. And nice to have you here. So we use concatenation from our first session, and we're using input. Okay, are we good? All right. So moving on to the next item. Just so that the first one sinks, I hope this is very simple, so I hope everybody is clear on that. If you do have any question, you can just let me know. So moving on to our version 2 for our BMI calculator app. Now we have, we know something else. We know how to take input, right? So we can upgrade our BMI calculator a bit. Our first app was just with fixed values. Yeah, we just have some fixed values, and it can only get, when this program is run, it means that it only has one output, one BMI calculation, because the weight and the height are prefixed. Okay, but now we know input, so we can ask the user to enter their weight and enter their height in centimeters, and we calculate it. We calculate the BMI and then display it to the user. Okay, so let's say beginners version 2. So that's our app. I copied the first code and we're going to change that. So now instead of this being 69, which is fixed, we'll go with input and ask the user for it. So we say, what is your weight in kilograms, right? And then our next input will be what is your height in centimeters? Okay, so we'll ask the user about for this and then go ahead. There's going to be some issue with this. I don't know if anyone has noticed it. What issue do you think would happen? There's something wrong with this code. Any idea on what the error or the problem with the code is? Hello. Okay, I'm going to give you some time to look at the code, and then you can put it in the chat or just raise your hand and I'll call you to speak and explain to us. So there's something wrong with this code, right? All the way asking the user for this information, there's some error with it, there's some bug with it. So any idea on what the bug is? Zainab?
Okay, you are dividing a string by a number.
Okay, Okay,
The
right.
height divided by height.
Great, great. That's right. So remember I mentioned that input would always be a string. So having this divided by 100 here, height divided by 100 here, means that you can divide a string with a number. Okay, so that's going to give us an error. And then we have weight divided by height. We're doing some mathematical calculations here. The value in weight, height, cm, all the right. Maybe we're going to get the error here before we get to this point, right? But then this would also not work because we have string. Right? So what we have to do is convert it into integer. And we already talked about how to convert that. So we can easily do that. So we just say int. Okay. All right, so I hope this is clear. So I just wrapped the whole input around an int. So whatever is returned from input, that value would be passed as a parameter to our int function. So that's a new value that's passed to our int function, and it converts it into an integer. And then we can go ahead and do a mathematical calculation. This is me doing all this in one step. Programming has different forms and different ways of doing it. The other option could be just taking the value as a string in a variable, then converting that variable into an integer instead, right? That would also work, right? But I just decided to do all that in one line. Okay, so now that we have that resolved, let's look at this then. So shift enter. So it says what's your weight in kg. So let's see. Assuming I'm 70. My height let's see, 178 probably. So now it works and gives me my BMI, right? So it says this is my BMI value. Okay, and this would definitely be given a different dynamic output based on the input the user gives. Okay, so this is a better version of our first app, which was just fixed to one value. Great. Okay, with that said, we'll be moving on to our Boolean expression. Okay, so yeah, I think there were some answers in the chat that I missed. So we have Agnes saying input only return string and we need to perform calculate. Okay, yes, that's good, Agnes. Lillian, it needs to be changed to in because it's a string. Okay, great. Right. So now we have Boolean expressions, right? We already know what a Boolean is. It's either true or false, right? And there are some comparison operators and not just comparison operators, right? So some other statements that would evaluate or, yeah, I think evaluate is the best way, yeah, that evaluates to a true or false, right? So if I say that 1 is greater than 5, right, it's either a true statement or it's a false statement, right? And we know that 1 is not greater than 5, so that's wrong. Okay, so these comparison operators are used for such statements, right? So these Boolean expressions. And the operators that are used, so the first one, which is the exclamation equal to, is it means not equal to. So if we want to say 1 is not equal to 2, so 1 not equal to 2, right, is exclamation equal to. Then we have the usual greater than equal to, so greater than or equal to, then less than equal to. Then we have the true equal to sign, and that is to say that 1 is equal to 2. Okay, remember that 1 equal to sign means assignment. That is when you're creating or assigning values to variables. Okay, so when you say 1, let's see, when you say 1 equal to 2, that's going to be wrong, right? This is an assignment statement. It's not a comparison statement. If you want to compare, you use the 2 equal to signs, right? So 1 equal to 2. in this way. So just take note of those. All right. So as I said, let's just look at some examples. I said one is 1 greater than, let's say 1 greater than equal to 5. When I print that, that's going to be false because 1 is not greater than or equal to 5. Okay. So doing these in the values itself works. We can also do that in variables, right? Whatever can be done with values can be done with variables, because variables are just names that reference values, okay, or refer to value, I think. So let's say age is 20, and then let's see, retirement age is 60, right? So let's say, since we haven't learned conditions yet, so let's just go ahead. So let's say age, so let's do simple print, so print age equal to retirement age, okay? And then we can run that, so it's false. If age becomes 60, it works, it gives you true. Okay, so these are Boolean expressions, and it's good to know these. And the next one, these are just building blocks for our conditional execution. Okay, so the main thing we want to cover is the conditional execution, but we just need these building blocks together. Now let's look at the logical operators. So logical operators, there are some logical operators that are available. So we have the and, or, not, right? You've probably heard that in other subjects and other things you've encountered. So if I say something is true and some other condition, we know that the evaluates to true only when both statements are true, right? And if it's or, so far as one statement is true, it would be true, right? And not would negate it. Okay, so if it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. So that's what logical operators do. So let's just see, if I see 1 is greater than 3, and let's print it. So 1 is greater than 3, and 2 is greater than 1. Okay. So this is false because 1 is not greater than 3. Okay, because this is false, everything becomes false. Let's use the same thing. If I entered an or, that would have been true. Okay. And if I say 1 is less than 3 instead, for the and, now it becomes true. Okay. So there's just, as I said, building blocks. So now let's move on to our main thing, which is going to be the conditional execution. Okay. So far, the programs that we've written are just straight sequential execution. Okay, so it starts from line 1, line 2, and it just goes through every line to complete the program. But then programs are not always like that, right? Real world isn't always like that. There are conditions and behaviors have to change to meet that, right? So your program should also be flexible and should be able to change behavior or change how it's executed based on some condition. Okay, so that's where conditional execution comes in. It allows you to change the behavior of your program according to whatever condition you check. So we have what we'll be looking at. We have the if, we have if else, and then we would also look at, let me add that one, which I didn't put here. Okay, so we have the try and except. Okay, so these four are what we'll be looking at today, and that would be the end for this session, for our second Python lab. Okay, so if, all right, So what if that is checking some condition, and when that is true, it runs or it performs something, right? It changes, it executes something only when that condition is true. Okay, so that's what if we do. So let's see, we can say, let's put in, now we have inputs. So let's see, number, let's inputs. Ask the user to enter any number, right? So enter any number. We want this as an integer, so I have to convert that to integer, to int. And then the next thing we do is, if we want to check this number and say, so maybe, I think there are many ways to do it. I'm considering what to do at this point. So let's say we can say that if it is greater than 0, right? So if it is greater than 0, so let's say if number is greater than 0, then do something, right? So if it's greater than 0, let's just print and say it's a positive number. Okay. All right. So in Python, mainly for conditional statements. So if you have your if statement and you'd want it to execute, this is not just limited to conditional execution, but that's where we are at the moment. So I'm just going to talk about that. So what you would have here is a colon afterwards, and that opens and tells Python that, okay, there's some block of code that is coming up and it's limited to this particular condition, right? So this block of code, only run it under this if statement. So it's only when this is true that Python will run those statements. Okay, so you have the colon, then what you do, or the statements you write after that should all be indented. They shouldn't be at the same level as your if statement. Okay, we mentioned it earlier on, or in our first session, that spaces, indentations are very important in Python. Okay, so this block of code, whatever is written here, it's all under our if block, right? So our if statement block. So when it's true, it will run those statements there. It can be one, it can be many. Okay, so let's see. Print number is positive, right? So print number is positive, and this is as in this block, right? So this print is in this block. I don't want to do anything aside printing number is positive, and then now we can end up our program and see that, let's see. Thank you for having fun with us. Okay, all right. So now this code, what it does is it takes the number from the user. If it's greater than 0, just prints number is positive. And then at the end tells the user, thank you for having fun with us. Okay, so that's it. So let's run this. Enter number, enter 6. Then I see number is positive. Thank you for having fun with us. Hi, can you guys hear me? I think I just had a message that there's an issue with my internet. Is it okay? Yeah, okay, all right, great. So I'll just continue. So now let's run this again, and let me type in -5. Right, so -5, you see that just says thank you for having fun with us, nothing else. So this whole session doesn't run because it's not true, right? The condition is not true. So that's it. And that's why if we wanted to do something else when it's false, we have the if else. Okay, so now we say, okay, if this is true, run this. Otherwise, do this other thing. Okay, so I'm just going to go with the same thing. So let's just copy, paste this here, and just add the else. Okay, so else, same level. Then we indicate to Python. Now we are getting into our else block. Okay, so else print number is negative. Okay, So that's it. So we can run this again. And if it is 6, it says number is positive, then thank you for having. Then we go and have negative, use -5, the other one. So -5 says number is negative, and then this happens. Okay. So now that we have this, for this condition, we had just the if it's greater than 0 is positive, otherwise it's negative. Let's say we have a scenario, and we meet such scenarios a lot of times, where it's not just if or else scenario. Is if this happens, else if this other thing happens, right, then do this. If this other thing happens again, do this, right? And then finally else, do something else, right? So that's what we have there: if, elif, and else statements, right? If, elif, and else. So we have if, which would be our general condition, and then we have elif, which will introduce another condition. So if it's this, elif, that, and else, do this, right? So we can go straight and say, since I can use the age in, so let's go with something else. So let's see, let's ask for age and see. So inputs was, what is your age, right? Then we go straight into our conditions. So if age is greater than 0, right? If greater than 0, that's my answer. So let me go with age is 60, right? I like retirement, so let's see, Ghana, see, age is 60, age is greater than 60, you have retired, right? You have retired, and elif, right? So elif, so what is the new condition? So elif, age is, you retire when you're 60, it's not when you're older than 60. So let's just go like greater or equal to, right? So the moment you're 60, you're retiring. So we say if age less than 60 and age greater than 18 or something, right? Say we'll print, hey, working class, right? Then finally else we print maybe going to become an adult. Okay, so I want to use this. I'm going to use the double quotes, so I can use the simple quotes in there. Don't become an adult. Adulting is not easy, right? So there's like a whole essay. Anyway, so that's it. And then still say friends, thank you for having fun with us. Okay, so we have our if, elif, else example here. So let's run this. So now age, let's say I'm 15, right? So it says here, don't become an adult. I don't think it's not easy. That's it. And then if I key in, let's go with the working class. So if I see I'm 25, then working class. Okay, so anything greater than that, let's just go through our conditions. So 62, then you've retired, right? So that's it. So we are done with our if, elif, and else statement and example. Okay. Are we okay? No question. I'm not getting any. Are we still there? That's all. Are we still there and following? This place is quiet, so I just want to be sure. Okay, great. Thanks for the reaction. Great. So now we go through our try except example. Okay. So try except is mainly for catching some errors, right? And these we are talking about like runtime errors, not syntax errors. I mean, syntax errors, the moment you're running the program, it happens. So runtime errors. So Python gives you this ability where you can just try running some aspect of your code, and then if something goes wrong, oh, okay, someone asked about it, putting 200. Okay, so yeah, let's try that. You want to see what happens, so let's do that. So 200, yes, you've retired, right? Because it's greater than 60. Say greater or equal to 60. So any number that is more than 60 would be that. Okay. If I put in negative 100, that's when it will tell me that don't become an adult, right? I don't know if anyone can be negative 100, but yeah, if you are, then don't think of being 18. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so try except is Python will allow you to try, maybe you're expecting user input, right? And users can be very unpredictable. So you're here asking for age, user enters in 18 in words, right? Instead, because you are expecting a user to put in numbers, but a user enters 18 in words, right? What then happens to your program? It's going to crash. You want us to try 5 MFR. Okay, go ahead, let's do that. So 5 says don't become an adult. Adulting is not easy. Okay. All right. So for the if else, we have if anything. So if the number is greater than or equal to 60, it would always bring this, right? If the number is between, I mean, it's less than 60, but then greater than 18, which means that 18 is not even included, right? So 18, maybe would want to include 18, but there's like from 19 to 59 would always be working class, okay? And then any other thing would always be don't become an adult. Okay, so just going back to the try except, as I said, users can be very unpredictable, and it's not just users. Sometimes you think some function or something you've written is supposed to act in some way, but there are times that it does something unpredictable, right? And you want to be able to control it instead of showing a user some default error from Python, right? That they can't like stack trees and things that they can't really understand. You want to control that. Python allows you to have control over that using the try except. So the try block is what Python would run. And if nothing goes wrong, that's it. It's all good. If it runs it and there's some error, then it goes into your except block. So except block is what you want to run, or you want to show the user when something is bad, like something has gone wrong. You say that, okay, do this instead. Okay, so let's look at an example for this. So we're going to pick the previous example, right, and just go through it. So let's pick this, and we're going to convert it into, no, I think it would be confusing if I have the if, elif. So let's leave it. We can put all that in a try except, but I think that will be my next example where I will just talk about nested conditions. So let's go ahead and same thing. So age, int, So let's try it first. So since I'm converting my input to age immediately on one line. Like if I wasn't converting it on one line, maybe I would have done something else. Okay, so let's see, try age equal to int and do input. What is your age? Okay, and then wait, no you. So when we say what is your age, let's see. I don't want to I can put the ifs in there, but I just don't want to mix it up yet. So what we're just going to do is print the person's age and say, okay, you are. So for print, those of you probably already know Python. You're using the concatenation, but there are other ways to concatenate in print. But since I haven't really talked about it, that's why I'm not using that and still using concatenation. So you are 20 or whatever it is. Old. Let's add years. Yes, old. Okay. So that's it. And this is what would happen if everything works. Like there's no error, except. There's no error, user doesn't do anything funky, right? So we say, if something goes wrong, we'd say, it's going to go, hey, you crashed my system. Okay, right. So we have something like this, and we're just going to try it out. So this is enter. So age, if I put in 50, oh wait, what just happened? Oh, okay, that is going to crash anyway. So there's not like a good example. Okay, I get it. All right, so just so that what I did doesn't crash, we have to convert, because we're doing concatenation, I have to convert this to string, because you cannot concatenate a string. I think I should have left this for somebody to figure it out. But yeah, unfortunately, I fixed it before realizing I could have somebody figure that out. So because we're doing concatenation, we can concatenate a string and an integer, right? So we have to convert the integer, because we've already converted it to an integer here. We have to convert the integer back to string. Okay, so that's just like a circular way of doing things, but let's stick with this for now. Probably not the best example, but we can still make it work. So let's put in 50, and now say that you are 50 years old. So although my first example, my first try was supposed to work with the try, I ended up going through the accept instead, right? So anyway, so let's go on. That's it. Now, if the user says, types in, okay, sorry, this thing is covering up. Okay, hope I'm okay. So now, because that input was unexpected, it crashed. The first one, the input was expected, but then there was something wrong with the code. So if anything in terms of logic, runtime error is in your code, it was still going into the except. Okay, so that's it. So that's for try except. This is like the simple part. Now, try except with nested conditions, right? So as I said, they are all. What I can do is have this whole section here in my, oh, that is not going to work. Okay. Indentation and spaces are very important in Python. So when I did copy and paste, my indentations were all off. So I don't want to have issues of working with all that. So I'm just going to do it like, I'm going to do it the long way. Let's go with that for now. Okay, so this is for our nested conditionals, and it doesn't have to be try and if else nested in try except. It could be if else nested in an if, some if else nested in the else part, and another if else nested in the elif part, right? It could be nested any way you want. It's just that sometimes too much nesting can make it very difficult for people to read and understand your code. And maybe sometimes when you get back to your code yourself, it becomes very difficult for you to understand what's happening. Okay, so I wouldn't encourage a lot of nesting, but some level of nesting when it's needed. Okay, so this here would still run the way we want it to. Okay, so that's it. We are done with our conditional execution. Okay, so what the last thing I did want us to do is with our BMI calculator app to create a version 3, and that would be adding in like extra stuff in terms of, and this would probably have to look it up. I know BMI, they have like ranges where you're in the red, green, orange, or whatever it is. So the third version would be to calculate the BMI and then tell the user if they are in red or green or orange. Okay. We've already spent like an hour and 10 minutes. I wanted the session to be an hour. So just know, should we continue or give that as an exercise in the notebook and then you try that yourself? Chat. It's quiet. Doesn't mean that we should leave it so that you would write the third version of the app in the notebook yourself. You could try it. Yes, yes. Okay, yes, try and learn. That's great. Yes. I'm glad that everybody's in tune with that. So great. Yes, so that's what we'll be doing. So I'm going to leave that. What I'll do is just add in, just so that we are all clear on the conditions. Who knows the BMI, the different red, green part? If you know the value good, the other thing is I'm just going to type in here and say maybe calculate the users BMI and display the BMI value as well as the, let me see, BMI indicator. I'm just going to call it BMI indicator. That's red, orange, green. Okay. All right, so added that to the notebook so you can just try that yourself. So that would be it. We can end today's session. So in the notebook, I also have, so there's a third notebook for exercises. So I just saw these interesting short Python programs that can be written. I have like 6 of them. And the exercise 1 notebook, so you can try that and learn as well. So aside this third version of the BMI, you can look at these exercise questions and try them out in the exercise notebook. Okay, so that is it. We've come to the end of our second session of the Python Labs. Thank you. If there are any questions, yes, the exercises are, let me see, no, they are not on GitHub. I will be committing that to GitHub. Let me just confirm if I please down. No, it's not GitHub. So the exercises, I will be committing that to GitHub right after this meeting. So you should see it. If you go to the GitHub, you should see it. And just go there like in the next 5 or 10 minutes, you should see it there. Okay, so for the Google Colab, I do believe I have to share it, so I'll need your email. Let's do this. Let me send you a link, so like a Google form, just send me your email and I'll share it with you, okay? So, it's a Google form. So I just place a link to the Google form here. Just send your email. I'll share that it's with you on Google Colab. Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's it. So thank you. We do have another session next week. So I hope you would join next week, because it will be a continuation of the second lab. What we'll be looking at is more on functions. So we will look at some more built-in functions, and then we'll look at defining your own functions. Okay, so next session next week is going to be mainly about functions, using some more built-in functions, importing some functionalities and using those functions, and then creating your own functions. Okay. All right. Thank you. See you next week. If you have any questions, put it in the chat, reach out on our platform.